Yo, what's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Pebble Beach Pro-Am. Gonna get you ready for all of that exposure on Saturday. But first off, a look at the DFS slate, and then afterwards, gonna fully break down everything from the prop and the betting angle to hopefully have ourselves a moving day. But then I'll include a look at the weather, ownership for DFS, also some strategy in what to look for when building your player pool. And we'll also talk conditions, pin locations when those drop on Twitter, and also some underdog and prize picks exposure detail for tomorrow as well. But anything on top of that you guys are curious about, feel free to go ahead and let me know in the chat. And today ended up being a resounding success. Round 1 was about as good as it could have possibly gone. Today was a close second behind that. We had a profitable DFS slate, a bunch of people in the community that seemingly took stuff down. So congrats to anyone that was able to do so themselves. And also on the prop of the betting side, we cashed out on that Tom Hoagie matchup and made it a profitable day for some of our other exposure too. So can't complain about that. Also played some golf with my buddies, and I'm playing with somebody that will be on the Hotel Planet Tour next year. That's the feeder tour for the DP World Tour, and I got to see him play lefty today. He was playing with the wrong set of clubs. Got to see somebody that's normally an absolute killer look a little bit more human. So that was fun. Still ended up losing money to him, even though he was playing lefty. So we won't talk about that aspect. But we got Jose in the chat. Welcome on in. Soda Kid as well. Shout out to DGen75, of course, always in our thoughts. And as he would say, let's fucking go. That's correct. You missed the banjos too. Me too, man. It's maybe one of these days we'll fire him up at some points, but obviously we'll remember him with some of the lingo that we have here on the channel. What's going on, Alan? Welcome on in. I appreciate the kind words. We'll definitely go through Ricky a little bit later. I got Hooves in the chat. I appreciate you, Patrick, as well. I will go through those questions a bit later on. And yeah, Mike asking the important questions right off the bat on how I shot today. Ended up playing pretty terribly, to be honest. I haven't played that much golf over the last month, but it was a blast. I got to play with my buddy Jeremy, who's the guy that'll be on the Hotel Planet Tour next year, and then also my other buddy Jared, and they're an absolute hoot. They were going at it the entire time. I didn't have as much money on the line or anything, but it was a lot of fun out there. We got C. Elliott there, who apparently took down or nearly took down the caddy today. Look at that, $5 into 200. That's a 40x ROI. You love to see it. Yep, you got Reality here as well. Said hopefully everyone had a banger day with the props too. I got you. That's what's going on. James, what's going on? Hooves as well. We'll get to some of those questions a bit later on, but the chat's on fire. Just want to say welcome on in. I appreciate all the support that you guys are giving on the channel this year. And yeah, the content's on fire. Our results are on fire. It's just a lot of good going on. So obviously, we have to be very thankful for our blessings of what we've had to start this year. And hopefully we can continue it going. We got Tonio, he says, will Hoagie be in the mix on Sunday? I hope so, Joe. And yeah, didn't play that well, but we had a lot of fun out there. But enough talking to the chat. I appreciate you guys. I could do it all night, honestly. But let's start talking some golf for tomorrow. So first thing I want to point out would be some of our results from today. First off, Adrian Herrera nearly took down the big $5 GPP. So that was something I wanted to point out. Even those near takedowns can be pretty big for your long-term ROI. So you'll love to see that. Also, our head-to-heads from yesterday. We had the Tom Hoagie one that I actually played myself at plus 125. We got better odds than what we saw on Draftkings. But if you're able to get the same odds that we had last night, so if you played them at Draftkings, Fanduel had similar odds to what we had there. All of them hit, except we had a push on Tommy Fleetwood. So, congrats to my guy Josh that went out there and parlayed those together. It's not going to be every single slate that we sweep on those, but it's extra nice when we do. And then, of course, we had our regular exposure from today. I had this under on Fleetwood and Shoffley playing Pebble Beach, which came through for 2.8x. And then also that Tom Hoagie matchup, which I was mentioning a bit before. So can't complain about that. Hopefully looking to ride that momentum into the rest of the weekend. But let's start the research process and what we got for tomorrow, which is going to be 3 sums off of both tees. Also only 1 golf course in play. By the way, going back to yesterday's results, or I guess today's results at this point, if you're watching tonight, Pebble Beach was easier than Spyglass, but like I hypothesized, it wasn't quite as big of a gap as what you had for round 1. So, there were some Spyglass guys that still had good rounds, which we kind of saw coming, including Scotty Scheffler, who we threw into our player pool. So nothing really that unexpected there, but unlike the first couple days, everyone's going to be at Pebble Beach. And because we have 80 players in the field, also no Pro-Am for the last few days, that's going to be a little bit different. More on that with the prop section later. I think that's going to have an impact on conditions. However, because it is 3 sums and we only have like a 2.5-hour window of tee times, there's not really that much room for a weather edge. But when we take a look at the weather, it does look pretty flat with the temperatures starting out about 50 degrees and then capping off about 54 degrees in the afternoon. So maybe not as big of a spread as what we've had for the first couple days. And that'll be important here in a second. But as you can see, about noon, the wins do kick up a bit. So if you're comparing some of the very early starters to some of the very late starters, it could be a quarter to maybe a half a stroke difference if you're talking about the very extremes on either side. But for most players, you're not talking about extremes in most comparisons. There would be, maybe a half an hour to 45 minutes between most players on those tee times, which is why it's not going to be a big part of my process, at least for the DFS side of things. And in particular, because some of your later starters, the guys that are, maybe towards the harder end of the spectrum, are either guys that just hardly made the cuts. That's not that problematic, but they're also the guys that are towards the top end of the leaderboard, which means if you're only taking those earlier starters, the guys in the middle end of the board, you are going to be missing out on some of the better form players that we have in the field, which, it's not to say that you want only guys that are hot in the form so far, because golf's volatile. We still need some leverage pieces in there. But when we take a look at the shots gain metrics here in like 10 minutes or so, and we're trying to find some of the people that hit the ball the best, you're going to have a hard time getting those players if you're only going to the early options. So that's why I think the weather is a little bit flatter than, some of the other slates that we've seen. And not a big factor, at least for your DFS strategy. But when it comes to DFS strategy, there's one thing that should be on your mind, guys, and that, of course, is the ownership angle, because ownership is the biggest part of having a long-term profitable process for playing in Showdown, because golf is extremely variant. It's hard to predict. Even when we have perfect plays on paper heading into the next round, sometimes they blow up, sometimes they end up working out. But, if we know ahead of time where the rest of the field is going to be going, we can make some really smart decisions, get to lower owned players that are also grading out well, so that when they hit, we're not sharing them with as many people, and also that we're not going to be duplicating ourselves as many times there. So we're going to go through the top 10 highest owned players, give you guys an idea of where the rest of the field is going, so you can start to account for that in your lineup building process. But this is only going to be the top 10 in the ownership. There are, of course, 80 players teeing it up. If you guys want to download the sheet completely uncensored, with not only ownership for all 80 players, but also my entire player pool, projections, modeling to help you out with your process, make sure to join the Golf DFS tier. There's a lot of people in the community that are obviously leveraging these tools and having a lot of success doing so. And I think we're up to like 10 takedowns from the community in just like 3 or 4 events. So yeah, maybe we can make it like 100 plus by the end of the year. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. But let's go through some ownership before we start doing some of the deep dives and questions in chat. We're going to start with Rory up top, who I've got as the highest owned player. And it's partially to do with the fact that he's one of the more expensive players and people like using all their salary, but also that -9 score is going to get a few extra people onto him. And I don't think that's a mistake per se. I actually think Rory is one of the best plays for round 3 Showdown. And it has a lot to do with how he hit the ball today. So that's kind of what I meant with, like, if you're only playing the middle end of the board guys that are going off early, you're going to get taken off of some of these guys like Rory. And I think that could be a mistake in a few different spots, but he is going to be much higher owned than some of the other guys around him. In fact, compared to Scotty Scheffler, he's about 4% higher owned, but he's cheaper. It's a little bit more manageable to use from that perspective. You could fit in an extra stud alongside with him. And that's personally the guy that I prefer between those two. But they've got Matt Fitzpatrick, Tommy Fleetwood, also a hair over 20%. As you could have guessed, both of them are also playing some really good golf to this point and are towards the top end of the pricing. So that's why they're getting some extra steam. The Scotty Scheffler at 18.8% has some ownership, but we've seen plenty of slates where he's been a lot higher owned than that. Chris Gotterup did not have his best stuff today. In fact, only shot -1, but he's still at -9. So I've got him at like 18.5%. Jake Knapp, he's -11. So he's one of those guys in the top 5 at this point. He's getting some extra steam compared to the 8K range players. And, maybe this 9K chalk is a little bit more stomachable because the guys up top get ownership by default. But when we start to get to the 8K range players, and these guys are, twice to even 3 times higher owned than some of the other guys around them, then it becomes a little bit more problematic. So, not to say that you'd have to fade a Jake Knapp, but it is something that you maybe want to consider a little bit more than with your 9 and 10K players. Russell Henley is there at 18.1%. A Zander, he's also, he's played well for us so far this week. A few outrights, by the way, that we have in the top 10 right now. Hopefully they can close and get a little bit closer to the lead before all hell breaks loose on Sunday. And the reason I say that, by the way, is the Sunday forecast looks nasty. And I think if anyone's going to win this event, they probably need to be within at least 2 to 3 shots of the lead. So hopefully some of our guys like Xander, Nick Taylor, there's a couple other ones within a couple shots of that towards the top, can make that move on a moving day. But they've got Hideki in the 8K range also getting some extra steam, and it has to do with his score. So, not to say that you have to be fading all these guys, but of this top 10 in the ownership, I think I'm only playing 3 of the top 10. It's either 3, maybe 4 players that I have in my player pool, which means the vast majority of these guys that you're seeing here, I won't be using in my lineup. So I just prefer the guys that are a little bit lower owned, especially when we have a full 80 players to choose from. And it's not always the case for round 3 showdown. Sometimes round 3 showdown, we're down to like 65 or 70. So we've got a few other guys to choose from. That's spreading out the ownership and leading to some low owned diamonds in the rough that you can get to. So again, if you want to see the ownership, see who some of those players are, you can find that on the Patreon version. Link in the description of the video to check it out. But anyone I'm using, I've got the rhyme and reasoning for it on there too. And this is what we're going to transition to next, is actually building your player pool for Saturday. Is what should you be looking for in your players to click them into your lineups. And because we have 80 guys to choose from, plenty to choose from in your DFS lineups, you shouldn't just be picking names out of a hat. So that's why we're going to go through the shots gained metrics together, find some ball striking poppers, guys that were hitting the ball well and that could perhaps take it into Saturday. We're looking for some short game regression as well, guys that perhaps are hitting the ball decent but couldn't get anything out of their short games. They've got high upside plays, course history, also POA putters that I'm mixing in there as well. And these bottom 3 aren't things that are tied to what happened today. It's important to note that your process should not just be based on what you had from the round 2 metrics, because golf is such a variant sport. I mean, that's why we harp on the ownership so much during these live streams. It's because if someone's going to be way overinflated from the ownership angle, there's only a few rare cases where that's actually worthy of being the case. So that's why we want to open up our process a little bit more to try and get some of those lower owned guys in there. And having high upside players in there, people that make a whole lot of birdies, is usually a good way to do so. If you didn't know, round 3 showdown, there are no placement points. So it's all about your raw birdie production. So I think optimizing on that is a very reasonable thing to do. Course history, guys that have played well at Pebble Beach, I think that's a no-brainer regardless of what track that you're at. And then the surface down here, this is for more like my value plays. I'm using this POA putting, but when you see a 6K range guy go off, I mean, we saw it the first day with Rio Hisatuni. A lot of times it's them gaining like 4 to 5 strokes putting. And the players that have the best chance to have that kind of spike performance are the ones that are the most familiar on the surface. So not only on my Patreon page can you see exactly who I'm using, but you'll get all the information behind it as well, so that you can decide whether it's for you or not. You can obviously add some of your own plays to your own player pool to round that off as well. But also, I point this out to everyone here on the live stream, not just because of the content I have behind my paywall, but also for your own process. You don't want to be throwing guys in there for just any rhyme and reason. You want to get those nasty plays out of there if you possibly can. And being very intentional in writing out why you're using certain players is the easiest way to go out there and accomplish that sort of thing. So, even if you're not using the same tags that I am, and honestly, if you're watching this, I'd implore you to get creative about it. Add things, subtract things that you find valuable and that you have success on in playing PGA DFS, but just have that process drawn out. Don't be picking names out of a hat, because if you are, you're not going to be generating that much long-term ROI. In fact, you're probably going to be donating money because of the kind of rake that we have in these DFS contests. So, it takes a little bit of work, but I promise you it's worth it in the long run. But now let's take a look at some shots gained metrics and go through some deep dives that you guys have in the chat. So if there's any players that we don't go through together that you're curious about, feel free to let me know. But we're going to spend probably the next 10, maybe even 20 minutes. I guess it depends on how many questions we have going through these metrics to try and find players that are going well trajectory-wise into a Saturday. So we'll mention what metrics matter, which ones are maybe a little bit more volatile that you don't have to look at as much. And then, like I said, anyone that you're curious about in the chat. But afterwards is where we're going to go through the prop and the betting side. Hopefully we have some pin locations to go through. In fact, I'm actually going to go ahead and refresh this to see if we have those, and we do. So beautiful. We'll have those to go through later. But we're going to go through averages, underdog and prize picks props, some exposure from the matchup side as well. So if you're here for all of that, just stay tuned for, again, maybe another 10 to 15 minutes, I would imagine. But before I open it up to the questions, I do want to go through our round 2 stats. And we're going to start with the ball striking. That's always our go-to. You guys probably could have predicted that. But it's the most consistent part of golf. How you're actually swinging the club is what you can take from day to day. So these guys that are over 2.5 strokes into the positive and are into the dark green are going to get a big projection boost in my projection. So for example, you got a Ricky up top, a Collie that gained over 4 strokes approach. Both of those extremely impressive performances. A Ariha Satune, Rory McIlroy. There's a reason why I like him, despite him getting that kind of ownership. Nick Taylor, too, also really hit the ball well. And the thing is with Rory's a past champion. He won last year. You had Nick Taylor, who won like 6 years ago at this golf course. It's not just that some of these guys are good ball strikers. Some of them fit other categories as well. Like, for example, Ricky Fowler's a pretty decent Pebble putter. He's also a high upside player. And when you can find multiple tags on the same kind of a play, and those are going to be some of my nutted plays of the slate. So a couple of those guys up top here, check that box. But Matt Fitzpatrick has some really good comp course history. He also hit the ball well. I'm going to be a sucker for that in quite a few lineups. But if you're somebody that also gained a bunch with the short game, it's maybe not as good of a stat profile. And you can see it with the top, 6 players that we have on the ball striking list. None of them gained over 0.4 strokes in the putting category, whereas a Harris English gained 3.5 on the greens. Minwoo Lee, Rico Hoey gained over 2 strokes into the positive. That is very surprising, by the way. Rico Hoey, probably the most dog shit putter that we have on the PGA Tour, but also one of the best ball strikers. So got to give him credit, even though we'll give him a little bit of crap where he doesn't play his best. But these guys gaining over 2, almost 4 strokes into the positive, like a Harris English, are players that are likely to come back down to earth a little bit. So I prefer the people that were closer to average with the putter, like a Jacob Bridgman. He's an excellent putter, but he only gained about 0.7 strokes into the positive. Brian Campbell, I guess we could say that about too, but Brian Campbell's absolute booty cheeks. I don't really care how Brian Campbell's playing, but guys like a Keith Mitchell and Akshay Bhatia that are a little bit better, you might want to boost up in your projection. So those are the ball striking stats, some of the players that especially stuck out there. But also we want to look at the short game, and I kind of hinted at it with Harris English already, but there are a few other guys on this list. It's also a bit of a red flag. If you gained putting and you were shit elsewhere, that's about as bad a stat profile as you could possibly see. So let's point out some of these guys. Harris, not so much, because Harris was also good ball striking. So, he was solid across the board. I mean, even if he was a little bit over his head with the putter, you still got to give him a lot of credit for that. On the other side, though, you've got like a Russell Henley. He lost 2 strokes ball striking. A Jordan Spieth lost ball striking. Justin Rose lost ball striking too. It's not to say that I'm automatically fading these kind of guys, but the shots gained profile is certainly not why you're using them for the next day if you are. But I do want to point out a Jordan Spieth and Justin Rose as guys that I'm still using regardless because of their course history. I mean, Jordan's had the near win, all these top 5, top 10s around the Pebble Beach. Justin Rose won this a couple years ago, had the third and another top 15 finish on top of that over the last 3 years. You can always make exceptions to the rule, but you still want to be intentional about some of those exceptions that you're making. So that's something to look at putting. You can also look at the guys that gained a whole bunch around the green. These could be players that come back down to earth as well. And, chipping in, which is usually what it takes to gain 2 or 3 strokes into the positive in this category, is extremely unsustainable. Whereas if you lost a whole bunch of strokes in these short game categories, these could be guys to give a little bit of slack to. So for example, in Andrew Novak, it's not like he was good tee to green, but he did only lose about 1.2 strokes between the off the tee and approach play, but he lost 4 strokes in the short game. If he's about a neutral in those 2, and then he improves to into the positive with the ball striking stats, that could be a half decent round for tomorrow. And I think maybe the better examples would be guys like a JJ Spawn, where you can see actually gained ball striking about a half a stroke to the field, whereas he lost about 4 strokes in the short game category. So, if he's neutral there, still gains a half a stroke ball striking, that's a little bit better than an average day. But if you can find somebody that can spike ball striking and get that short game regression, then these could be low-owned studs that get you towards the top end of those 150 max contests. But it has to be said that some of these guys are at the bottom end of the leaderboard, are playing some of the worst golf out of anyone. So you want to be careful about using some of these short game regression candidates, but they're extremely powerful in 150 max sort of formats to help you get that differentiation in there. So those are the shots gained metrics. And now we're going to open it up to some of those questions. But I also want to point out where you can find some of these data points to use to build your player pool, because it's not just the shots gained metrics that you can find on a site like Bet the Number, but you can also find the high upside players by looking at birdie average via the whole props tab. Or the round props tab, I should say. That's the absolute nuts that you have over there. By the way, if you guys want to check out Bet the Number, you can look at all the shots gained metrics. You can take a look at the birdie averages, all by using code Gsluke when you sign up. They'll give you a free trial on Bet the Number. So if you want to try out the modeling, the tools that they have, which if you're somebody that bets or does prop stuff, what are you waiting for? I mean, they've got the absolute nuts for that. But even for DFS, like we're talking right here, they have a lot of valuable stuff on there as well, just like you can find with some of those birdie or better percentage players. But also, don't forget about some of the other things that we had on my spreadsheet to find some of those other lower owned categories, like the pole putting. I have a lot of guys at sub 5% that I'm using on that category. And also, we've got the course history there. By the way, Pebble putting, that's this category that I have highlighted towards the right. Also, event history, we have a whole tab for that as well at the bottom that you guys can see there. A Patreon page for all of that. But let's catch up on the questions, go through anything strategy-based that you guys are curious about, and then let's try to make some more units on the prop and the betting side afterwards. But before then, let's catch up on those questions and make sure that everyone's got everything that you're curious about taken care of. But let's go back to the beginning, make sure that we're not going to skip over anything. And believe we had a question about Ricky. So let's do that one. I love Ricky. We saw he was the #1 ball striker today, and it's going to be hard to beat that. 4.78 strokes into the positive on approach, and he was only about a neutral with the putter. It's a 9, maybe even a 9 out of 10 stat profile. And I don't ever give 10 out of 10, so that's the only reason that he's not a 10. Maybe he could have been better off the tee, right? And that's why we'll give him the 9 or 9.5, but I absolutely love what you're doing there, man. Going on, Patrick, you said, I appreciate the positive energy, my ability to not dwell on the negative. I appreciate you, obviously, giving me those kind words. But let's get to your question. You said, when you're looking at Draftkings on Rory versus Scotty, how does the early start for Scotty affect my decision-making? So yeah, it's a very close spread, but between those two, I think it's closer to an hour difference. It could make like a quarter of a stroke difference, but based on the handicapping, I mean, Scotty's already the favorite there. It's not changing the thought process that much. And, you know, you said that it seems like Rory has been unlucky in spots and then Scotty's been off. If that's your take, then I'm totally fine taking a shot at like plus 150, plus 160, whatever you can get on that. And I love Rory tomorrow. We're actually going to talk him up on the prop section here in just a few minutes. I've already entered a prop and a positive stance prop for him for tomorrow. I would say that the tee time, though, like to specifically address your question, should not factor into that much. Let's see. He said, how much weight do I give the most recent round stats versus earlier rounds? It's a great question, right? Because you don't just have to look at round 2. We could also incorporate round 1. Round 2 for me, though, is much more important than round 1. Where I start looking at some of the earlier stuff is when we get to round 4 and we have a whole 3-round sample size to go through. But for the case of round 3 and what we have on this live stream, I'm much more looking at the round 2 stuff. But if you want to look at it together and kind of use that as another data point to try and build your player pool, then I think that's okay too. I do prefer the recent stuff though. Let's see, Keegan. Let's look at some Keegan for the shots gained profile. And by the way, if I skip your question, just let me know. I'm going to try and do my best to make sure we catch all of them. Round 1, gained across all 4 categories, was a bit short game dependent though. So it was reasonable for him not to have as good of a day today. He did lose across all 4 categories. So you got to give him at best, maybe a 2.5, a 3 out of 10. But Keegan Bradley is a bit volatile. He's somebody that can have a rough day and then go out there and really spike the next. Yeah, you're not going to play him because of the shots gained metrics. Mentioned that with a few guys before, like a Spieth and a Rose, but there's a time and place for using somebody like him. What's going on? Sites, welcome on in, my dude. He said, how about your guy, your Ricky? One of the first times in a while you can confidently say your weekly outright on him might pay off. Yeah. That's me and Jordan Spieth. I actually haven't bet Jordan Spieth to start this year yet. And normally that's my weekly donation. And I'm glad that it's working out for you. I love seeing Ricky play well too, man. He's just one of the better guys that we have on tour. Will Hoagie be in the mix on Sunday? Well, let me look into my magic ball. Just kidding, obviously. We don't have a magic ball. We're not know exactly what's going to happen. I will say, though, that he's doing it in a relatively sustainable fashion. Today, he gained across all 4 categories. That's as good as it's going to get. He could have been a little bit better on approach, I'd say, but round number 1's where he did that, where he gained 3 strokes into the positive. So I'd rather see him do it like he did Thursday than what he did today. But yeah, I think he's got a good chance to do so. I have a top 20 bet on him, so hopefully he can keep that up at the very least. Let's see. Does Rory have the highest upside with his talent and ball striking? I'm not quite sure we can say that. I actually think that there's some other guys that run hotter when they're playing well, but he's at the very least in the top 3. I think a Scotty Scheffler, when he's running on full throttle, is hard to beat from going nuclear low. But yeah, he's up there. And in the past, maybe like 5 years ago, for sure, would be saying Rory's like the hottest guy on the tour. But there are a few other guys that are in that conversation now, I'd say. He said, is the weather worse for round 3? Lines are higher. It is a little bit worse, but actually the main reason for that rushing, it's only like a 2 to a 3 mile an hour difference in wind. The bigger difference is the pin locations, which we're going to go through together. They should be harder because the Pro-Am's over. You don't have like Travis Kelce, Alex Smith playing in the field anymore. So you can be a little bit, what's the word for it? Tighter with some of those pin locations towards the side. He said, you thankful that you don't have to worry about stacking a course? Well, it worked out for us today, so I'm not sure if that's really the case for me. I would rather have the 2 courses to be able to go out there and stack with a half a stroke advantage. But hey, I guess everyone likes different things. I like making money though, so I would have rather had it just like today again. It worked out for us. He said, just recently found my channel, but I've really enjoyed it. Also, what are the benefits of my Patreon page? And also, is Ricky going to get it done? I hope Ricky plays well. I didn't bet him outright, though. So I hope one of my other guys actually ends up winning. Could he get it done, though? Yeah, absolutely. He's one of my top picks this week for a reason. And what are the benefits of my Patreon page? Well, I showed you the spreadsheet from before. You get all my projections, all my modeling for every single player. You want to see who I'm betting, who I'm using in DFS, or what I'm actually betting, then that's where you can find all of that. Obviously, here, I try and go over some more process-based stuff. We talk weather, we talk strategy, any questions in the chat. But if you want to see, like, just very in plain English, like who I'm using, who I'm betting and all that, that's what that's for. And we're an unbelievably profitable channel here. We're up over 350 units over the last 3 years. So yeah, there's a lot of value in having that information, I would say. You got Scotty top 10 at plus 112, yay or nay. So I'll give you, I don't know, where's he starting? I guess that's the thing we should probably look at first, huh? He's starting at T34. He's got a makeup. He's at -6. The top 10 right now is -10. So he's got to gain 4 shots gained more than everyone else over the next 2 days, and he's plus money to do so. That feels like a good line, man. Like, that's usually the way I look about it, right? Is he's got to make up 4 shots over the next couple of days over what everyone else is doing that's also at the top end of the board. He should probably be about 50-50 for that. And because it's plus money, maybe that's reasonable to play. If it was like -110, I'd be telling you to probably look the other direction, but that's a somewhat reasonable bet. Said, speaking of ownership, Cam Young was 30%, 40% in the single entry. Didn't see that coming. I did. Remember, we mentioned there were a few guys that were vastly overpriced that would be super highly owned in single entries. He was one of those guys. You also had Harris English. That was super cheap. We mentioned him yesterday as a potentially nutted play because of that. There are a couple guys that happened on. And we mentioned that yesterday, James. So I don't know if you're just not watching the live streams or whatnot, but yeah, that's something that we've talked about quite a bit here, man. So I don't know if that's surprising to the other 132 people that are watching, but go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Let's pump up those numbers if you guys haven't already either. Got 132 of you guys in here. It's the most we've had for a long time. So again, I appreciate all the support you guys are giving. Is it day 3, Rory? I'm thinking, yeah, Sunday Rory could be a little dicey, but day 3 Rory's a little bit better. You really wish that there was some wind this week. You'll be getting that on Sunday, man. He said this course is getting eaten alive. I'm here for the low scoring, at least when I'm betting for some low scoring, but I'm there with you, man. I like to see these guys tested a little bit more than what they have already. He said 104 watching, 9 likes. You probably have to refresh that to do so, but you know what to do. You heard the guy in chat. Let's pump those numbers up. He said Luke's scale of 1 to 10 on Pierce and Cootie. Let's take a look. Not somebody that really caught my eye too much, but he had a decent stat profile, at least round 1. Let's go to the round 2, though, which is going to be more pertinent here. Gained short game and then lost ball striking. So yeah, this is why he wasn't catching my eye that much when I was going through my process. The round 1 stats had me slightly concerned. I'm like, why didn't he catch my eye with him gaining ball striking and losing in the short game? But it was the exact opposite in round number 2. So a little inconsistent. You could still use him as like a high upside player, I'd say, in your process. If you take a look at last year's birdie or better stats, he's top 20 on the PGA Tour. So he's still usable, but yeah, the shots gained metrics wouldn't be why you would be going through it. It's a deep dive on the Bridgman. I got you. Normally a putting first player, but I believe today it was more so the ball striking that carried him. Could have been better off the tee, but that's always going to be his weakness. I'll give him a 6.5 out of 10 on the sliding scale there because we could have seen better off the tee play. He also still gained 2.5 strokes short game. Like the 1.8 strokes around the green feels a bit unsustainable. But him gaining 2.4 strokes on approach, he's not the most consistent iron player that we have on tour, but because he is such a good putter, I mean, him gaining 0.7 strokes is actually not that big of a problem to me. It's more so that around the green play, that's the red flag. He can gain 2 or 3 strokes putting tomorrow, and that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. And if he can do that and gain some strokes on approach, then that could be a low round right there. So I think it's a decent play, man. Would I take Scotty plus 350 for the bogey-free round or Rory at plus 450? I don't really have good modeling for that, man. And while I could give you an answer and just kind of like move on and like a lot of other touts would, I'm just going to shoot it to you straight, man. I don't know whether those are value or not. I will say that the bogey average was about 1.8 per round. So that's a relatively low average on tour, by the way. So getting plus 350, plus 450 on elite tier guys doesn't feel the worst, but I don't have a process. Like I don't bet those regularly. So that's why I have to say, like, I don't know whether that'd be decent value or not. I want to look at the pin locations first. We're about to do that together after we get through some of these deep dives in chat. If it's a relatively like average pin location setup, then I think those could be reasonable. But if it's a harder pin setup, like I think it's possible because of the lack of the Pro-Am, then you might want to stay away from those. So let's stay tuned. I'll give you some extra information on that here in a few minutes. It's a nice 2-win and nice void win on the matchups. Absolutely. That's going to pay out for everyone that took those. Kitayama is cheap for sure. I think he's going to get steamed up though. So I'd be worried about the ownership on that one. Let's see. Yeah, I don't think it updates live. You're right. But hey, we can pump them up regardless. Hey, if you're only seeing 5 likes on there, I've got to get those likes up. So go ahead and smash it regardless of how many are there. Deep dive on Chris Kirk. He said, bro was your go-to prop money maker last year. He's better at these shorter tracks. So like this could be a Chris Kirk kind of week. He's not played amazingly so far, but let's look at the stats. Maybe they're sneakier than I would expect. Gained on approach today. Then he lost a little bit around the green. He lost off the tee. He's got to hit more fairways because he's not a long player off the tee. He can't only be hitting 64% of his fairways and having a spike round. But if he gets that closer to 70 or 80%, and then maybe has a little bit of a better putting day, then he's got an avenue towards a decent score. And he's at T34, middle of the road in an elite tier field like this. He's playing better than most would probably realize. Hit a deep dive, Denny McCarthy here, just looking at the prop side. Okay, I got you. So good old Denny, lost on approach, lost off the tee, and then gained in the short game categories. Yeah, man, the deep dive is not a positive one, unfortunately. If you were looking for ball striking stats, that's not the case here. A little bit more short game dependent. Denny McCarthy is an elite tier short game player, so him gaining a stroke around the green and putting is not that big a deal. Like he does that a lot out on the PGA Tour. The bigger deal is him losing over 2 strokes on approach. So he's got to clean that up if he can. I think he's got a half decent chance, but that's a big F. Approach play is the most consistent part of golf from day to day. Curious, what are my thoughts on Kurt Kitayama? I think he's going to be relatively highly owned because of the price tag. However, he played half decently today. Could have been better on approach. And he gained 2 strokes putting. Actually, now that I look at this, it's probably a 4 out of 10 stat profile because the iron play could have been a lot better. It's the most important category. I like what he was doing off the tee, but gaining 2 strokes putting, it's not like that's completely unsustainable, but Kurt Kitayama is not a very good putter. Like when we click on his profile and we go like through some of the last results that he's had, let's see. Yeah, he's lost putting in like 4 of his last 5 starts. So him gaining 2 strokes putting is a little bit of a bigger red flag than most. So yeah, I'm probably staying away, man. Even at that good price tag, I just think he's going to be pretty chalky. Looking forward to Xander, Spieth, and Decky pairing tomorrow. Yeah, I've actually got something for that pairing. So more on that when we get to Draftkings. But I think my guy Jordan Spieth might be worthy in that free ball market. He said, just had to refresh it. There you go. Scotty on a streak of 17 straight top 10s. So yeah, to go back to that bet, that's the one that guy was betting at plus money. Yeah, it's worth a shot. I thought it was 50-50 odds and you're getting slightly into the plus money and you got that streak going on. I've seen worse bets, that's for sure. You put $20 on Hoagie and Hisatuni hitting the top 20 based on my research, and it pays 20x. Let's hopefully be able to cash that by Sunday. We'll see. Gerard, a good lower owned play for round number 3. He's going to be low owned. That's for sure. But if we take a look at the stats, they're like a 6 out of 10. He gained ball striking, lost around the green, and then gained putting. The thing is, though, he's really good on this POA surface. So if anyone's going to keep it up, gaining like 2 or maybe 3 strokes per round, it's him. So yeah, I could see it, especially because he's not going to be like 10 to 15% owned like some of the other guys around them. He said, am I still filling in with any of the Ship It crew? Is it only on my channel now? Only on my channel, man. It's not going to work out with the partnership with them. They were trying to bring me on to their team in the offseason, and they didn't offer me nearly enough money to do so. So obviously that's just business. That's how some things end up working out, but it's going to be here on my channel. I'm super stoked to be able to do everything on my business, and I don't have to work for somebody, which is beautiful. I'm not somebody that likes working for somebody else. So I honestly think it worked out to the positive. This is the most signups that we've ever had. The biggest live streams that we've ever had on my channel. So I think it worked out for everyone, right? They're obviously, they've got a really good team. I still love everyone there. Tyler, Hoop, everyone that they have on the team there is fantastic. But I get to do my own thing, which I enjoy. I don't like working for somebody else and having to listen to them. So it's kind of nice for me. Hey, Sterling, he said Scotty's top 10 is plus 160 on FanDuel. Dude, plus 160, I bet in a heartbeat. Now, here's the only thing on that, Antonio. It might be with the dead heat odds. That might be some of the reason why that's different. But I think that's fantastic, man. He said Siwoo is going to be a pivot up top. I would say he's a pivot. Yeah, in my ownership, I don't have the uncensored version up in front of me, but I believe he was the lowest owned of the guys over $9,500. So yeah, from the ownership angle, that definitely checks out. He said, looks good, but Tom Hoagie's inexperience, +5 and -8 are both in play. No doubt, man. No doubt about that. He's an extremely inconsistent player, especially over the last year. Before, maybe 2 years ago, we wouldn't say that. Like, Hoagie had a really good floor when he was gaining off the tee and approach every single round. But now it's like Groundhog Day every once in a while. He'll go and he'll shoot +8, like you said. Let's hope not. Let's hope it's a bunch of -5s. And I didn't bet him outright, but my guy Byron did, the Monomaniac, one of my buddies in the industry. And he got like +300, +3,000, whatever it is. 300 to 1. I'm way off with that. Plus 30,000. Crazy odds on that. What are my thoughts on Berger? Berger's playing like shit. That's my thoughts on Daniel Berger. It's a great course for him. So kind of surprising that he's bombed so far this week. But it was the short game today. So he's somebody that I would call a short game regression candidate. He was just slightly into the negative ball striking, but lost, 4.5 strokes between the around the green and the putting. I mean, here's the issue with Berger. It's kind of like the thing with Kitayama. Kitayama's not a very good short game player. Right? That's why him gaining the strokes putting isn't that good of a sign. Well, look at Daniel Berger's putting. He's just dog shit putting more often than not. So is he going to turn it around? Maybe, but he also might just continue sucking ass. Like, that's well within his range of outcomes too, I'd say. Does Rosie finally kick it into gear? I hope so. He's really the one play I had this week that's sucking ass the most. So it'd be nice to see him get it into gear, because then I'd have some cashes that go from like min cashes in DFS to closer to the top 10%, which would be pretty nice. He said, hey, I'm the man. I appreciate that. But he said, got a quick question. I appreciate my time as always. Are you stupid for wanting to take Scotty for the under and 6 birdies? Kind of. I'm not going to call you stupid for it, because I understand the sentiment, right? The average, I think, is going to be closer to 4.5 per round. We'll see what the pin locations do with that. So he's still got to, making 7 birdies is 2.5 over that kind of average. But I've got a roll, and that's not to bet against Scotty Scheffler on the prop side. So that's the other reason I say it might be a little silly. He said, Luke, it wouldn't be a live stream if I didn't ask about McCarty. The profile is improving. Let's take a look, man. He's also somebody that really didn't catch my eye. And I have a feeling it's because the ball striking wasn't there, and that is the case. But round 1 was horrendous, and he was horrible with the putter. That was his main issue. I thought maybe we could see some short game regression, and we did. He was 4.3 strokes better than what he was in round 1. It's just that he didn't improve the putting and then also flip the ball striking into the positive. So yeah, he's still got some upside, and he's an extremely aggressive player. That's a high birdie percentage guy. So I think that he's live from that perspective, like even just not looking at the shots gained. It's the best live stream since the big guy. Pre-ship it, of course. Hey, I appreciate that, man. Even being mentioned in the same conversation as DGen is just an honor, I would say. What happened to Thorpe today? He was awful. It's a good question. I didn't see any of his shots because I was playing golf myself, but he lost 4.5 on approach. Yeah, that's going to be tough to overcome, if we're being honest. And he also lost 2.5 on the greens. Yeah, he didn't have anything. He also lost off the tee, also lost around the green. Makes you wonder whether he's like injured, maybe he's sick, has something going on, because this is very unlike a Michael Thorbjornsen. So kind of surprising there, I'd say. I actually didn't take my score today, man. I stopped taking score after 4 holes. So, if I had to guess, probably like plus 90 or something like that. Let's just get this guy out of here. Thoughts on Rio? He's playing fantastic golf, and his over-unders at 70.5 and plus 100 towards the under. If you're able to get plus money, I would probably bet that sort of thing, but I think there's better players at 70.5. Like, excuse me. There's at least guys like Sepp Straka that they have at 70.5 strokes that I took on sites like, the better and stuff like that, like the pick'em sides. But plus 100, I don't know if it's enough. Like, I'd rather be getting like plus 125, plus 110 if I'm taking that level of player, as opposed to somebody like a Sepp Straka or a Keegan Bradley's also at like 70.5 strokes. I think it's just a little bit better. And I think they even had like a Keegan Bradley, for example, on Fanduel was like juiced towards the over at 70.5. So you might even be able to get close to that plus 100 on a guy like that. I would just prefer to go that direction. And it's nothing against my guy Rio. I bet him this week for the top 20. He's one of my top plays for a reason. However, he's just not a stud. He's somebody that is spiking. He's having a hot streak over the last couple events. I'm more of the long-term sample size guy, so that's why I'd go in that direction. He said, Luke, can I deep dive Sam Stevens? I got you. Let's take a look at how he played today. He gained ball striking, and then he lost about almost 2.5 strokes in the short game categories. Yeah, it's a 7 out of 10 stat profile, man. If he can continue to hit the ball well and then be closer to an average between the short game categories, a lot of upside there. I'd say regardless of format. I know you said you're just asking in general. DFS, he could be a decent play. I don't think he's going to be super highly owned. I think even for props, he could make sense as well. But that's all I've got for the DFS side, guys. If you're here just for that, best of luck with everything that you guys are going with. Again, make sure to check out the Patreon page for all the projections and modeling that we have for Saturday. And hopefully it's another good day for the community and a whole bunch of takedowns. But now let's try and add to the bankroll from the prop and the betting side of things, which I think based on these pin locations, there could be a lot of value to attack, because my initial reaction, because I didn't have the pins when I first entered, some of the stuff I entered is I said that they overreacted to the conditions tomorrow, as they took it from the minus 2.9 average to looks like about a minus 1.5 scoring average is what they've adjusted it to, at least based on the odds that we're seeing. And I think that's way overdoing it. The wins are just marginally higher, and it's really only towards the end of the day where it becomes an issue. And you have to keep in mind that they're doing free sums off of both tees, so they're going to be starting by like 10:30 local time, which means they are going to be playing some of their rounds when the wins are up, but probably only about half of it. So that factor, I think, gets limited because of that. And then also the pin locations, which should be a little bit harder. It's not like it's going to be like going from super easy to mega hard. That's just not how it works. If you take a look at the scoring average at Pebble Beach the last couple years at this event, one of them was cut off on Sunday, so we don't have that sample size, but Saturday and Sunday usually play just as easy as what we had for the first couple of days. So I do think the average I'd put closer to like -2, maybe like -2.5 is the range that we'll use for right now. But like the average for birdies should not go down to more like than 4.4 per round, would be as low as I'd put it. The bogey average probably isn't going to go higher than like 2.25 per round. And based on the averages that you're seeing, it's like they're working with a 4.25 birdie average. It's like they're working with a 2.5 or even a 2.75 bogey or worse average. So I just disagree with that. I think that they've overdone it. I also have the Spyglass Hill ones on here, but obviously we only have Pebble Beach stuff for round 3. So that'll be our main focus. But even if it does get harder, I think there's going to be a lot of positive stance value. And we didn't have the pin locations to go through, but we're going to go ahead and do that right now just to do a last second check. And as long as they're not insanely hard, which they could be, who knows, right? What we're going to see here in a second, I feel really good about what I've already entered. And I'm just going to share those props with you that we took on better. I think Underdog had them at the same numbers, and Prize Picks didn't have their board up before, but we'll see what they have from that perspective as well. But let's go ahead and see what these pin locations look like. So hole number 1 looks almost exactly like what it was for the first couple of days. It's like 3 paces to the left. I would say marginally more difficult than what it was, but you know, you're talking about like a 0.02 shot difference from round to round. Really just nothing there at hole number 1. Let's go to the next one. Next, we have a front left pin location. This is the reachable par 5. This is an easier pin. It's a bit of an easier up and down and a shorter shot in. I don't think the eagle rate's going to change much, but you'll probably see slightly more birdies at hole number 2. So again, this is why we go through the pins. Maybe they'll be easier for all we know. Hole 3 is on the left. It's also slightly easier than the first few days. The reason I say that is you don't have this berm to the right side to deal with. My guy, Justin Rose, hit it into the frickin' bunker today and then couldn't even get it over that berm with his shot. It's not going to be nearly as difficult towards the flatter and side with less slope there on the left. Let's go to 4 next. 4 is going to be a front right pin, which even looks easier than what we had for today. Yeah, this is good that we've gone through the pins. I actually think it might be set up easier so far than we had for the first couple rounds. Then next, you have 5 inches in the very back middle. This is the first harder pin that we see so far. This front left corner is a little bit more of a attackable position. You don't have to worry about the right miss or going long. It will be a longer shot as well. So this hole will probably play like 0.2 shots harder. This one will be pretty significantly harder than we had for some of the other days. Let's go to 6 next. 6 is going to be in the back right corner. This is a reachable par 5, and I would say that this is an easier pin than the first couple days. And the reason why is that you had this slope in front of the pin, which caught some people out. For example, Sam Burns, even though he went super low, nuclear low round 1, he chipped it back to his feet. It was not able to make a birdie at hole number 6. But now that it's in the bigger, fatter part of the screen, it's going to be an easier up and down. It's a longer shot, so maybe harder to make an eagle, but I think you're going to see a higher birdie rate at 6, which is the bigger difference in my opinion. Let's go to 7 next. 7 is going to be a front pin, which is even easier than what you had for the first couple days. So this is another one we're going to see a shit ton of birdies. It's like almost in a funnel. I mean, look at this. You got some slope to the left, slope to the right, where if you just hardly miss, it's going to get brought down just close to that pin location. Let's go to 8 next. 8 is a back right pin. This one's harder. So kind of like 5. This is going to be one of the holes that's a little bit harder, but look where it was for the first couple of days. It's not like it's that far off from where you had it before. So this is maybe like a 0.05 shot difference. not very big compared to the first couple of days. Let's go to 9 next. 9 is going to be a front left pin. This one's tricky, and it looks like it's easier than the first couple of days, but it's actually not. And the reason why it's not easier is because there's a smaller portion of the green over here, and you're hitting a long iron in. This is one of the very few holes that's long around Pebble Beach golf links, and although the greens are a bit softer than what they would be at like a US Open, for example, this pin location is at the easiest going to be about the same as what it was for the first couple of days. So, maybe it's similar, maybe it is ever so slightly harder than what you had for the rounds 1 and 2. Let's go to 10 next. 10 is going to be a middle left pin. I would say it's slightly easier than the first couple of days. This is a relatively wide portion of the green over there, and it's a little bit of a shorter shot in. Let's go to 11 next. 11 is going to be a middle right pin location. I would say slightly harder than the first couple of days. It is just tucked over that bunker, which could become a little bit problematic for guys in certain cases. Let's go to 12 next. 12 is going to be a middle left pin location. I would say it's about the same as the first couple rounds. It's not much of a difference about here as opposed to over there. Let's go to 13 next. Let's see where that one's at. 13 is going to be at the front part of that green. So about where my cursor is now, a little bit easier than the first couple of days. So far, it looks pretty average. You've got some harder holes, some easier holes. I wouldn't actually adjust the averages all that much. Now you have it over here on the right side also, and say a similar pin location to the first couple of days. Maybe slightly harder just because this was easier to get up and down to at the very middle. Let's do 15 next. 15 is going to be a middle back pin location, kind of towards the right side. So I would say a little bit harder just because it's a slightly longer shot, but you're still going to see a lot of birdies there. Let's go to 16 next. 16 is a back left pin location. It's very similar to the first couple of rounds, so hardly any difference there. Maybe ever so slightly harder just because it's a little bit of a longer shot in. And then finally, you got 17. That's going to be a back left pin. And this is one of the holes that will be harder. This is a hole that's probably 0.1 to 0.2 shots harder. It's a longer shot, and it brings that bunker into play, whereas it was a little bit more wide open towards that, right side of the green if you're looking at it from the tee. And then finally, 18 is the finishing par 5. That's going to be in the very back middle. I would say it's about the same difficulty as the first couple of days. You might be kind of tempted to say that it's harder, but you got to remember that they're hitting a super long shot in. It's a par 5, for goodness sakes. And look how tucked it was towards the front. You had a downslope to deal with. Now, if you're tacking it into your second shot, that is, you're going to have a chance to actually get it close. And the up and down, if you miss short right, is much easier than if it was the first couple of days. Like you were short-sighted, it was hard to get close there. Now you've got all of that green to work with. So going back to the averages and looking at the wind, I'm okay with the -2 to -2.5 scoring average. I don't think the pins are harder or easier than really what I was expecting. So I'll say the birdie average, I'm going to put it 4.5 per round. I'm going to put the bogey or worse average at 2 to 2.5 per round, which is how you get to that sort of a scoring average. So fairway average may go down ever so slightly just as the course is drying out a bit, but I expect that to still be about 9.6 per round. And then the green average at 13.15, some of those par 3 pins, they were kind of tricky, like 5 and 17 really stand out. So maybe that goes down to like 12.75 per round, maybe 12.5. If plays harder than what I'm expecting or something like that. But those are the kind of averages that I think you would expect to see on a moving day. So with that in mind, what kind of value makes sense to attack? And better isn't something that I can bring up right here, but it's where I got a lot of my exposure. Rory McIlroy, I got at 69.5 strokes at even money. He was at even money. I guess over the last couple minutes, he has bumped down to 0.86x. But that was an absolute no-brainer to enter, because if I think the average is going to be like -2 to maybe even -2.5, he's only going to gain a half a stroke or a stroke to the field to cover that sort of thing. And you're talking about the second best player in the field, somebody that hit the ball beautifully today and has -150 juice towards the under. Unfortunately, they ended up moving that one on us. So what we're going to do is, by the way, if you have better, check that out. They still have Rory at 69.5. That's still something that I would absolutely go with. But let's see what Prize Picks has up. Maybe they haven't bumped stuff quite yet, and we can find some value there before it moves. But let me see. So Rory is at 69, so he has bumped over there on that side of things. See what some of these other ones are at. So let's see what Sepp's at. Sepp is still at 70.5. Let's look at Underdog 2. What is Sepp Straka at? So he does have a multiplier, unfortunately, on underdog, but you could still get Sepp Straka at the same number that I got him at. And I did bet this on Better. The reason for that, by the way, the reason why I think Better is the best spot to play at is they have the best multipliers for these bets. So if you're trying to squeeze out some extra ROI, that's a really easy way to do so. But Sepp Straka is, I forget the exact number, but even on DraftKings it was minus 142 or like minus 144 towards the under. But if I think the average is going to be -2 to -2.5, Sepp Straka, who was a top 20 player on tour last year with multiple wins, especially at the more positional courses, that's where he found all of his success last year, I think is a no-brainer to match that sort of an average. So it was plus EV value on DraftKings. So I thought that was a no-brainer to mix in. And while the exact combinations that I took might not be available right now, let me see if they have the Goddard prop I took up. Goddard, by the way, got a ball lost in a tree today. So while we had some stuff go our way that was good, we also had that completely fuck us today. So I guess we'll point out the negative on that too, right? Because it really did bone us, him losing that ball in the tree. But I took his under at 2.5 bogeys, but it doesn't look like that one is available in any of these books. But if you could take Sepp Straka at 70.5 and you could pair it up with Chris Goddard for the under at 2.5 bogeys, I think that's a no-brainer to mix in. And the reason why I like the under on Chris Goddard is the average was 1.84 per round. I think it goes up to like 2 to maybe 2.25. But Goddard was number 13 on tour in bogey avoidance last year. So somebody that's an elite tier player in that category should definitely be juiced towards the under at that 2.5 mark. And I got those two for 2.5x on that website. So, and I don't think it was those two that I exactly played together, but those are two props that I did enter on Better. I believe I took the Sepp one with Rory. So that's why it's not the exact same combination that I took, but let's see if any of the other ones I have on here are available. Let's see. Do they have Ricky Fowler at 4.5 birdies? I hope so. They do. They still have Ricky at that same exact number. So Prize Picks is a slightly worse payout. So if you have Better or you have access to it, I would just prefer that 100% of the time. But here's why I like the over on Ricky Fowler. I think the average might go down to 4.5. Maybe it even stays closer to 4.75 again with some of the easier pin locations on like the par fives. However, even if it goes down to 4.5 per round, you're talking about Ricky, who is on absolute fire. He's at the top end of the leaderboard. And today he gained 4.8 strokes with the approach play. He was by far the best player in the field with the iron play. And that's the most sustainable part of golf from round to round. And if you take a look at the odds on a site like DraftKings, he was minus 144, or maybe he was minus 146. I can't remember the exact number. Doing my best, but it was in that range towards the over, which for me is an absolute no-brainer to play when the traditional analysis was also behind that. So a couple leans that you can take into, after seeing those pin locations and them not being that bad, I feel really good about the exposure that I got in before. And DraftKings has slightly different odds than FanDuel. DraftKings looks a little bit more optimistic than what you have on FanDuel. So if you're somebody that can only bet on the sports books, definitely check out FanDuel as they have slightly better odds. But I agree with the DraftKings pricing. Like, I think the pricing that DraftKings has is probably exactly around where I would put it, which is why I'll use it for some of these plus EV leans, like we've already pointed out. Like, for example, Rory was like minus 150 towards the under on DraftKings. But on FanDuel, if you are only on those sports books, that's the spot to get your exposure, in my opinion. At least if you want to tail the positive exposure plays that I'm going through. But the other thing I want to point out, and I hinted at it before, is I think I want to play a Jordan Spieth 3-ball tomorrow. And I'm going to have to see what the odds are that I can get on Hard Rock Bet. But if I can get around this plus 230 number, I think he might be worth a shot against a Matsuyama and a Schauffele. And I like a Schauffele this week. I bet him. I know Matsuyama is playing well. Obviously, a near win last week and continuing it so far this time. And this is the house that Spieth built. This is a golf course that he has some of his best performances over his career at, and he looks like he's back. I mean, he's gaining across all four categories. At least he did that the first day. He was close to doing it in round number 2. Plus 230 feels a little bit disrespectful. And if I get exactly plus 230, it might still be a decision on whether I end up entering it. It might just be like a half unit sprinkle if I get plus 230. But if they tempt me with plus 240 or plus 250 on a Jordan Spieth, then I'll take that for the full unit bet. So that's an example of the kind of matchup exposure that you guys can see for tomorrow. But I personally hate the 3-balls. Like, 3-balls for me, you go for the long shots or you don't bet anything. Because like the guys like Hovland or Griffin that should be the favorites, like of this top matchup that you're seeing, they shouldn't be plus 140 or plus 150, though. Those are absolute scam odds. So I try and stay away from the 3-ball markets where I can. And what I probably will be attacking a little bit more for moving day will be the head-to-head markets that you have on Hard Rock Bet. And what Hard Rock Bet will do is they'll take like 2 players from any given matchup, and they'll also post odds for just the head-to-head market. And oftentimes they'll be drastically different than what you'll find on other sites like Draftkings and Fanduel. So you can usually find a lot of value on those Hard Rock bet boards, which is where I'm personally going to be spending a little bit more time. But maybe this Jordan Spieth prop isn't, the worst shot with the kind of course history that he has here. But when I get those markets on Hard Rock bet a little bit later, I will be fully deep diving those. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through any questions that you guys have for me in the chat. In general, though, to kind of put the bow on the pick'em side of things, I like positive stance plays. I think especially if you can find plus EV value, that it makes a whole lot of sense to mix in. And just line shop it, right? Don't be taking lines that you can find better spots elsewhere on. And I do want to take a look at Prize Picks just because they normally have the biggest boards. And some of the other sites were a little bit more limited with what they were offering, just to see if there's anything that is drastically off here. But it looks pretty similar from the pricing perspective. Like maybe it got up under on strokes. Like I know we couldn't enter the under on bogeys because they didn't have it up yet, but maybe an under 70 wouldn't be the worst play on that one. I mean, I'm expecting the scoring average to be about -2, right? That's 70 strokes. He'd be somebody to match or beat that. It'd be a no-brainer sort of bet. Even a Matt Fitzpatrick might be playable for that sort of thing. I'm looking forward to breaking down this board a little bit more after I get off the live stream. So those would be the props that we're taking for the community tails in round number 3. For the rest of the exposure, it's obviously been very profitable to start this year. Also to start this week with 2 profitable days so far. Make sure to check out my Patreon page for that. Golf DFS tier is how you guys get access to the spreadsheets I was showing you before. But for all my betting exposure, that's what the golf betting and prop tier is for. That's where you can find all my underdog and Prize Picks props every single slip as I'm entering it, so you guys can catch the same exact lines that I'm entering. But also, I post the averages there for all of your research purposes. I also post weather reports so you guys can deep dive all of those as well, all over there on my Patreon page. So highly recommend checking it out if you guys haven't already for everything that I'm taking for tomorrow. But before we hop on out of here, it is getting a little bit late. Definitely want to cut it off in the next 4 to 5 minutes, but I do want to touch on any of those last second questions that you guys threw in there for me. But thoughts on P-Rod? He said the pin location's alive. Thank you for that. We're able to go through this together, but let's go through some P-Rod. So I love the course fit. I like the fact that his caddy was a 4-ball Pebble Beach caddy. I feel like not a lot of people know that, but hey, if you do your research, that is something that you would have picked up on. Unfortunately, was horrendous ball striking in round number 2, though. So yeah, he carried himself with the short game. That's kind of a tough scene for me. It's something that I'm not sure whether I could tail heading into Saturday, but the course history stuff and the narrative, I guess, with the caddy could be the saving grace on that sort of a play. Let's see. So thanks, Lukey. Always appreciate the effort. I appreciate you and your support on the channel as always. Say, hey, Luke, thanks for the Stevens deep dive. After hearing me out, what do I think about his under at 70.5? Depends on the odds you're getting. If you're getting like plus money on that, then I could see it. But I kind of said it before with the Rio one. Like I like Rio. He's somebody that I would grade out as about a field average player, but there's just better guys that you could take. Like for them to have Keegan at that same number, I would just prefer him a little bit more. That Spieth is speaking out to you for a top 10 investment. I might bet him to win, man. I was thinking about using him just to straight up win this event. I know he's 5 shots off the lead, but with the forecast on Sunday, I think we're going to see a lot of variance and a lot of chaos over the next 18 to 36 holes. So I could see that, man. What are the odds on that? You'll have to let me know. So, hey, Luke, you saw Hard Rock has Rory over Tommy for the weekend at -125. He said -165 to -175 at other books. Keep in mind that the tie no bets might be part of that, and that's why the odds are a bit different. In adjusting, they're normally like 25 points off on the tie market. I think that's closer to -150 on that sort of a thing. So still might be value, but not as big a value. Just keep that in mind. They have Rory at 5.5 birdies. It's even money on both sides. Yeah, I'd rather take him at even money to shoot -3, but like even 5.5 birdies isn't a terrible bet, I'd say. I do prefer the strokes one, though. Like, I just want to throw it out there. Like, I think it's a much higher hit rate than that one. Thoughts on Bud Cauley's strokes line? It's 71.5 and his under is -138. You don't know if you could stomach that -138, but it's a great line. Yeah, shooting -1, it means he can lose probably a stroke to the field average and cover it here. And I think you probably saw this, right? And this is why you think Bud Cauley is such a good play. I agree with you because he's gaining 4.2 shots gained on approach, and that's what he did today. Yeah, that's a sustainable kind of shots gained profile. Even eating that kind of juice might be worth it in that case. So thanks as always, penning out. Hey, I appreciate you. And go Ricky. I appreciate you as well, Mr. Mice Gold. Hopefully I said your name right. I might not have. I got you on the Keegan one before. I think he's setting up decently, but not the best ball striking today. You got Minwoo at 5 birdies. Yeah, not my favorite play, man. He's got to make 6 to go over, which is asking a lot. And if I think the average is going to be about 4.5, that means he'd have to gain 1.5 to go over. Not to say that he's going to have a lot of under equity, because I do think he should be at that 5 projection, given that he's an above average player. But when you look at the odds on DraftKings, like I think Minwoo was minus 150-ish odds for the over. Ricky is minus 144, and he's hardly different, right? It's only like 6 points off there, and you can get him at 4.5. So that's just the kind of spot where I'd say like do some line shopping, find somebody that's a similar type of player at the 0.5 lower mark. You said got her up is 69.5 and the under is plus 100. Do I lean on him shooting -3 or better? I would say so, yeah. With a -2 scoring average, he's somebody that I have about a shot gained baseline, 1 shot's gained to the positive. So yeah, I could see that. He said, check text, you came in late. I'll check them after we get off the live stream, my dude, but hopefully you're having a great night so far. He said -125 is the Tino bet. Yes. I know I said that maybe it wasn't because the odds were so far off, but yeah, I could see that, man. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. He's just a clearly better player, right? Like to go back to your question, Rory versus Tommy, I think Tommy sets up well for this course. He's playing some of his best golf of his career, but Rory McIlroy, I project him a half a stroke to a stroke better per round. So I could get behind that for sure. Spieth is plus 250 for the top 10 on FanDuel. I know that I can't bet that. I have to see if they hang anything on Hard Rock Bet, man. But I think I might just go with the free ball bet and then maybe an outright sprinkle. I want some exposure to Spieth, though, especially if you can get this thing into contention. You said you need 2 players for round 3 showdown. You can check out my Patreon page. That's where I post my entire player pool, man. But I don't do that for free here on the live streams, unfortunately. And then, yeah, I appreciate you, Antonio. Thank you for all your support here on the channel. But I'm going to go ahead and cut it off there. We're at the hour mark. Do got to get some sleep here myself so that we can wake up and get back after it tomorrow morning. But best luck with all of your exposure that you guys are going with. Hope to see you guys at the top end of the leaderboards. Hopefully we can cash out on some of our prop exposure as well and continue to add to the bankroll on what has been an absolutely awesome week. But that's all I've got, guys. I appreciate your support. As I was saying, check out the Patreon page for all the behind-the-scenes content and everything that I'm entering on top of what we've already talked through already. And I'll see you guys for the live stream tomorrow night. Ooh. There we go.